Imagine a plane so fearsome, so technologically advanced that even the bravest pilots hesitated to face it in battle. An aircraft shrouded in secrecy, armed to the teeth, and with a reputation that echoed across the skies. Following the devastation of World War II, France emerged from its dark and repressive period of occupation with a newfound ambition to reclaim its military power. France was keen to make its mark on the new period that had just begun. Here comes the bold, forward-thinking Sud-Ouest Vautour, an aircraft that has changed the game. The Vautour was the pinnacle of French Cold War innovation, and its similarities to the Soviet Yakovlev Yak-28 were only coincidental. It served the French Air Force for a solid 15 years. Its relatively bulky appearance hid its genuine capabilities. Despite its shortcomings, the Vautour was immortalized in aviation history as it was transformed into a lethal night fighter and devastating attack aircraft. War had wreaked havoc on French aircraft manufacturing, and engineering teams were in disarray. This led to a decline in technical expertise, especially in the developing sector of jet propulsion. The French Air Force had to start from scratch to meet this task. In June of 1951, they issued a comprehensive call for a jet-powered aircraft capable of performing the roles of bombing, low-altitude assault, and all-weather interceptions. French aircraft manufacturer CNCASO responded to the call with a proposal to modify their SO4000 model. The Vautour, French for vulture, prototype showed exceptional flexibility in carrying out its various responsibilities. Experimentation with the Vautour's flight was a thrilling experience throughout. During a risky shallow dive, a prototype managed to go faster than Mach 1, creating an exciting moment. The heavens echoed with the music of acoustic victory, setting the mood for what was to come. 6 prototype airplanes were ordered right after this achievement. Not your average planes. These were examples of world-class engineering. 2 of the engines were British creations, one roaring with Armstrong Siddeley Sapphire power and the other purring with Rolls-Royce Avon. The remaining 4 rocketed upward in sync with the French Attar engine, which ultimately proved to be a robust and reliable option. The Vautour's prowess could be displayed in full force with the help of the increased thrust provided by water injection. The Vautour II, as it was renamed, appeared in 3 distinct forms. For decades, it was a fixture in the sky after making its debut in 1958, when it entered service with the French Air Force, ADA. Some Vautours remained in the military after primary duty ended in 1979, doing support roles into the early 80s. As a result of the initial success, the Vautour went on to become the most promising twin-jet military aircraft in Western Europe, earning high praise from aviation experts as early as the 1950s. With its shoulder-wing monoplane design, swept wing, and flying tail, the Sud Aviation Vautour was a flexible weapon of war. 2 SN-ECMA Attar 101 turbojet engines mounted in pods under the wings provided the roaring propulsion. The Vautour's distinctive landing gear looked like bicycle wheels. Underneath the front and rear of the fuselage, the main units were stabilized by smaller gears at the base of the engine pods. The main fuselage held a large weapons bay measuring 5 meters, 16 feet and 5 inches in length, and a substantial amount of fuel. During World War II, an American-made Norden bomb sight was used to aim the weapons. The Vautour was available in several different configurations, the most prominent of which were the Attack Aircraft 2A, the Specialized Bomber 2B, and the Night Fighter 2N. The new and improved Vautour, serial number 4050, made its maiden voyage on October 16, 1952. The test phase went without a hitch, and the plane even broke the speed of sound once. 6 prototypes were ordered, each with a different set of engines, although the French Attar engine was installed in all later production variants. In 1955, the Vautour was officially integrated as the first airborne strike force component of the French Air Force's Strategic Air Force Command. A turning point for this once-anticipated aircraft came when it became clear that the Vautour was less than optimum as a strategic bomber. Despite the Vautour's initial proficiency, its flaws soon became apparent. It was unable to keep up with newer designs as an interceptor because of engine problems. The lack of cutting-edge navigation and assault radar equipment proved an insurmountable obstacle. Ingenious refueling techniques and other efforts to prolong its usefulness were ultimately unsuccessful. France had a stricter demand for a supersonic replacement aircraft in 1956, 2 years before the Vautour entered squadron service. Until a more capable replacement could be selected and produced, the Vautour fulfilled this role as the carrier for France's independent nuclear deterrent. It was generally agreed that the Vautour's usefulness in this capacity was, at best, limited. The Dassault Mirage 4 bomber was chosen, developed, and produced as a result of this effort to acquire a more cutting-edge bomber. Not to be outdone, Sud Aviation opted to respond as well. They wanted to show that they were committed to being on the cutting edge of aviation technology, so they came up with their own plan for what they envisioned as a Super Vautour. The Vautour was only ever meant to be a stopgap measure, but its development reflected a time of change in French military aviation as aspirations rose and technology advanced. In 1958, the Vautour was officially adopted by the French Air Force. Even after the last plane was retired in 1970, several continued to be used until the 1980s for auxiliary purposes. Despite its shortcomings and the difficult epoch from which it arose, the Vautour has become a symbol of France's comeback, inventiveness, and ambition. A fresh chapter in the Vautour saga began in Israel at the same time that it was being written in France. The Israeli Air Force needed a new, more potent combat plane to replace the de Havilland Mosquito and counter the Tu-28 jet bombers flown by Arab countries. Their final decision was the Sud-Ouest Vautour, a machine that had already proven itself in France and was ready for a new beginning. On August 1st, 1957, a Vautour made a covert landing in Israel, with only 1 or 2 being shipped out each month and disguised with French Air Force markings. Its presence was kept under wraps until the summer of 1958, although the Vautour's shortcomings were more obvious in Western European service due to its lack of modern targeting and navigation services. In Israeli service, these issues were less of a concern. A variety of weapons, including 30mm cannons, rocket pods, and France's first nuclear bombs, ensured that the plane was ready for its new mission. The Israeli Air Force's Bat Squadron and the Knights of the Heart were the first to use the Vautour in battle. Since its first use against Egyptian fortifications in 1959, the aircraft has played a crucial role in many of Israel's major conflicts with its neighbors, including the Six-Day War and the War of Attrition. The Israeli Vautours took part in numerous air battles and dropped bombs and strafed targets. An intriguing incident occurred when Israel Vautours engaged Iraqi Air Force jets during attacks on the H-3 airbase in western Iraq during the Six-Day War. On June 6, 1967, Captain Ben Zion Zohar downed an Iraqi Hawker hunter, marking the Vautour's first and only aerial victory. Although the Vautour was successful, that didn't imply it was invincible. The next day, 2 Vautours were shot down by cannon fire from Iraqi hunters. 15 Vautours were destroyed in battle over the course of their service. As the late 1960s progressed, additional American fighters entered the fray. The Vautours were replaced by the A-4 Skyhawks and the F-4 Phantoms. The Vautours served admirably for over a decade before finally being put out to pasture in 1972. The Vautour's journey across Israel ended when the Knights of the Heart Squadron switched to Skyhawks. The Vautour saga was coming to a close in France. There were high hopes for it, but only 140 were ever produced, and were never used in action. In response to France's need for a new high-performance bomber, Super Vautour was suggested by Sud Aviation, the same company responsible for the Vautour. However, the Air Force ultimately decided to go with the Dassault Mirage 4. The Vautour's story is a fascinating study of contrast and change. The skies of Israel gave new life to a machine that had